You won't last a minute against me, human. The alien princess didn't know his strength. The air was thick, but clean, carrying a faint scent of metallic minerals and flowers that only grew under Zalaris' twin suns. The people of Zalaris were taller than humans, their skin shimmering slightly like polished bronze, and their eyes were sharp and alert. Every movement seemed precise, controlled, and strong. Eli looked around calmly. He had been preparing for this moment for years. "Welcome, human," said a soft voice, but one that carried across the platform with authority. Eli turned to see Princess Ziara, the youngest daughter of the ruling family of Zalaris, standing on a raised dais. Her long hair shone silver in the sunlight, and her eyes glowed like molten amber. She was exactly the type of being people whispered about in the Galactic Alliance, strong, intelligent, and fiercely proud. "You've come far," she said, her tone polite but icy. "But don't think your kind will last even a minute here." Her lips curved slightly, a hint of amusement. "I hope you understand the challenge you face. This arena is not for the weak." Eli bowed slightly, the human gesture of respect, but his eyes never left hers. "I understand," he said simply. His voice was calm, steady, carrying a confidence that surprised those watching. Not because humans lacked courage, but because no one expected a human to face an alien princess without fear. Around them, the crowd of Zalaris citizens whispered and murmured. They had all come to see the human fail. The arena had hosted champions from dozens of species across the galaxy. None had lasted more than a few minutes against the trials of Zalaris. And yet here was Eli standing tall and unafraid. "Your challenge is simple," the princess continued, her voice rising. "The arena tests strength, skill, and endurance. Many have tried, many have fallen. Do you still wish to continue?" Eli nodded. "Yes." The crowd laughed softly, some snorted. To them it was impossible that a human could withstand even the first trial. The air crackled with anticipation. Holographic screens above the platform displayed the human, showing close-ups of his face. Every eye in the arena focused on him. As he was guided to the entrance of the arena, Eli noticed the details. The walls were high, reinforced with a metal unknown to Earth's technology. The ground was uneven, designed to make movement difficult. Platforms floated in midair using anti-gravity fields. Obstacles were everywhere. He took a slow breath. He had seen similar designs in simulations on Earth. He had trained for this. Inside the arena, Princess Ziara observed every detail, her gaze sharp. "No human has ever lasted past the first trial," she whispered to her aide. "I am certain this one will be no different." But even as she spoke, she studied Eli carefully. There was something unusual about him. He did not flinch at the size of the arena. He did not hesitate when he saw the obstacles. Most species would at least pause, calculating their first move. He simply walked forward slowly, deliberately, as if measuring the arena with his own confidence. The first trial began with a loud gong, a sound that echoed across the massive chamber. From above, floating platforms began to shift, moving in unpredictable patterns. Between the platforms, small energy barriers appeared, pulsing faintly with light. Any misstep could result in a severe shock. Eli's eyes narrowed slightly. He studied the movements, then began to move. Step by step, jump by jump, he adjusted his body to the rhythm of the platforms. Each movement was careful, precise, but not hesitant. He fell once, quickly catching himself before he hit the ground. The crowd gasped. The princess tilted her head. No human had ever made it this far. Minutes passed, and Eli continued. Sweat formed on his forehead, his clothes clinging to his skin, but he did not slow. The platforms became smaller, the energy barriers more frequent. Many in the audience whispered, "He won't last." But slowly doubt began to grow. He was still standing. He was still moving. He was still focused. Princess Ziara felt a strange sensation. She had trained all her life, facing opponents from the strongest species in the galaxy. She had never been challenged like this. This human was not faster than her, not stronger than her, not more agile, but he had endurance, and more than that, he had focus. The second trial began. Weighted droids appeared, programmed to push and block challengers. Eli faced them without hesitation. He used his balance, his timing, and even his own small strength to maneuver past them. The droids struck, attempting to knock him off the moving platforms. Each hit sent jolts through his body, but he endured. He adapted. He did not panic. A few in the audience whispered to each other, "How is he still standing?" Others shook their heads. "It must be a trick. There is no way a human can endure this." But there was no trick. Eli's strength came from something different, not the raw power that many species relied on, but the human ability to keep going, even when tired, even when the odds seemed impossible. Princess Xiara stepped closer to the edge of her dais, studying him intently. This human, he doesn't fight like the others, he doesn't try to prove himself, he doesn't even fight to win. He just survives. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper to herself, but Eli's sharp ears caught it. He smiled faintly, not at her, but at the idea. The galaxy often judged humans by their size, by their strength, by their appearance. They had never learned to see the quiet power humans carried inside. The power to endure, the power to survive. The final part of the first trial approached, a series of rotating beams suspended above a pit filled with a low-gravity field. Misstep and the challengers would fall, struggling to regain balance. Eli paused, measured the distance, and jumped. He swung across the beams, using momentum and timing, landing on the final platform with only a small stumble. The crowd erupted, but not with joy. It was a stunned silence, filled with whispers and murmurs. The princess's lips parted slightly, eyes wide. No human had ever made it this far, not in any recorded history. You are still standing," she said, her voice almost shaking. How is this possible?" Eli straightened. "Because humans survive," he said simply. "We endure, that is how we last." His calm words, simple as they were, carried weight. They carried a truth the princess had not yet understood. The arena cleared for a moment, and Eli looked around. The sunlight reflected off the walls of the arena, making everything shine like crystal. He felt fatigue, yes, but he also felt alive. This was the moment humans had been waiting for in the galaxy, to prove that endurance, intelligence, and courage could match raw strength. Princess Xiara's pride was shaken, though she did not admit it. She had faced the best warriors from many species, and yet here was a human showing her something entirely new. She studied him carefully. "Your journey has only begun, human," she said. "The next trials will push you harder, many will break where you have not." Eli nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I am ready," he said. There was no arrogance in his words, only calm certainty. For the first time, the audience began to see humans differently. They were not the weakest species. They were not fragile. They were resilient. They were strong in ways that the galaxy had not expected. And so, part one of the trial ended, not with victory, but with a revelation. The human had survived what many believed impossible. He had shown that strength was not just in muscle or speed, but in heart, mind, and will. As he left the arena for the day, the princess's gaze followed him. There was something in her expression, respect, curiosity, and perhaps a little fear. Eli did not know this yet, but his journey on Zalaris Prime had just begun. The trials ahead would be harder, more dangerous, and the galaxy would watch closely. But humans had already started rewriting expectations. And Eli. He walked forward calmly, ready for whatever came next, with a quiet strength that no alien challenge could easily break. The sun of Zalaris Prime hung low in the sky, casting long golden rays across the bustling city of the capital. Eli Carter had spent the morning walking through the streets, observing the alien citizens who stared openly at him. Their tall, graceful bodies and glowing eyes had once seemed intimidating, but now he saw them with curiosity, noting their precision and discipline. He had faced the arena, survived its first trial, and learned something valuable. Underestimating a human was a mistake no one should make. Princess Xiara, meanwhile, returned to her chambers, pacing as she replayed the events of the first trial in her mind. Never before had she encountered such persistence. Not even the strongest warriors from the Vorten cluster or the Krelani Empire had lasted this long. Humans, she reminded herself, were small, fragile, and soft. That had been the galaxy's opinion for centuries, and it had never failed. Until now. Her aide, a young officer named Kyle, watched the princess nervously. "Your Highness," he said, "this human, he is not like the others. Perhaps he is trained in ways we cannot understand." Xiara stopped pacing, her eyes narrowing. "Training?" she asked. "No training can overcome a species built for endurance. Humans survive, yes, but they do not endure under extreme pressure like this. They should have fallen already." Eli, unaware of the conversation, had been taken to a small lodge near the arena. Inside, he unpacked his modest belongings, quietly inspecting the maps and holograms the Zalaris officials had provided. The maps showed the layout of the arena for the next series of trials, including obstacle courses, energy fields, and droid simulations. He studied each carefully, noting the sequence, timing, and potential hazards. To anyone else, it might have seemed obsessive. But for Eli, this was preparation. Humans had survived challenges far greater than any trial a princess could design. On Earth, humans had endured floods, earthquakes, wars, and the harshest climates imaginable. The physical trials of Zalaris Prime were nothing compared to what humanity had survived across generations. Hours later, he left the lodge and wandered through the market district, blending in with the alien crowd as best he could. Vendors sold glowing fruits, shimmering fabrics, and advanced gadgets that defied human understanding. Children with delicate metallic-tinted skin ran through the streets, laughing and leaping gracefully from one hover platform to another. Eli smiled faintly. He had faced danger before, but observing a new world, learning its patterns, and understanding its people, this was another kind of test. Humans were not naturally the strongest, but they were curious, intelligent, and resilient. That combination had carried them further than any physical strength alone ever could. Back in the palace, Princess Ziara began her own research on humans. She called for her library of interstellar records, scrolling through thousands of files, historical logs, and expedition reports. Her curiosity was genuine now. Humans had been considered weak, unremarkable, and insignificant. Yet here was one standing before her, proving all of those judgments wrong. Her mind kept returning to the same question: what made humans endure? She read of Earth's harsh climates, storms that lasted for months, earthquakes that destroyed entire cities, and civilizations that had risen from the ashes of their own failures. She read of their inventiveness, their ability to create tools, machines, and technologies beyond what other species could achieve. But it was not just their inventions or intelligence. It was something deeper. Humans survived because they refused to give up. They endured when others would surrender. They faced impossible odds and kept going. Ziara felt a mixture of admiration and unease. She had trained all her life to be the strongest in the arena. Yet this human, small, soft, seemingly fragile, showed the one trait that could surpass raw power: relentless will. The next trial was scheduled for the following day, and Eli arrived early. He walked calmly into the arena, noting how the structures had changed. The first trial had been a test of balance, timing, and endurance. This one was different. Mechanical arms swung from the walls, and shifting floors appeared at irregular intervals. Energy barriers pulsed unpredictably, and small drones hovered nearby, programmed to push challengers into traps. The crowd gathered again, excitement buzzing in the air. Ziara sat on her dais, her eyes fixed on Eli. She studied every movement he made as he approached the starting line. The human did not seem nervous. He adjusted his stance slightly, testing the floor with a careful step. His body was tense, ready, but not rigid. Unlike most challengers, he did not rush, he did not hesitate. He simply moved with precision. The gong sounded, signaling the start of the trial. The mechanical arms swung toward Eli, fast and unpredictable. He ducked and rolled under them, timing his movements perfectly. The shifting floors tried to knock him off balance, but he adjusted his center of gravity quickly. Every step, every jump, every roll was measured. The drones hovered near him, attempting to strike, but he dodged with a mixture of reflex and anticipation. Princess Ziara watched in silence. Each time Eli avoided a hazard, each time he regained balance after a misstep, she felt a strange tension in her chest. This was not a human failing. This was human determination, and it was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. Halfway through the trial, Eli stumbled slightly. One of the rotating floors tilted unexpectedly, sending him nearly off the edge. He caught himself gripping a support beam and swinging back onto stable ground. A cheer, or perhaps a gasp, went through the crowd. Even the Zalaris spectators were beginning to understand. Humans were not predictable. Humans did not fall in the ways expected. He continued, slower now but steadier. Fatigue began to show on his face, sweat dampening his hair, muscles straining with effort. Yet he did not stop. Humans had long learned that endurance often mattered more than speed or brute strength. They had survived by continuing, even when it was painful, even when the odds seemed impossible. Ziara could no longer look away. She found herself studying him, fascinated. He did not attack the drones. He did not try to outmatch the obstacles in raw power. He studied them, learned them, adapted. Every movement was calculated, efficient, and patient. The final segment of the trial was a narrow bridge suspended high above the arena floor. The bridge swayed as energy pulses ran beneath it, attempting to destabilize anyone who crossed. Eli paused at the edge, calculating. He did not rush. He moved forward slowly, feeling the sway, adjusting his weight with each step. Midway across, a drone lunged toward him. Eli ducked instinctively, letting it pass harmlessly beneath him. The crowd watched in stunned silence. The princess's own eyes widened. Never before had a challenger approached this segment with such calm control. Step by step, he reached the far end. The gong sounded again, signaling completion. Eli stood tall, chest heaving, sweat dripping, but alive. Not only had he survived, but he had done so with focus and intelligence. The audience erupted, but the sound was different this time. It was not mocking laughter or anticipation of failure. It was astonishment. Humans had been underestimated for centuries, and this one had proven that strength came in more forms than the galaxy expected. Princess Ziara's voice broke through the noise. "Human, you continue to surprise me," she said, her words filled with a mix of frustration and awe. "You do not fight as others do. You do not rely on strength alone, yet here you are, still standing." Eli nodded, breathing heavily but keeping his posture straight. "Strength is not always in size or speed," he said. "It is in the will to keep going." Ziara's eyes softened slightly. She had trained to crush opponents, to dominate with power and technique. But this human had something different, a quiet force that could not be measured by her instruments, her tests, or her expectations. In the palace later, Ziara sat alone, reflecting. For the first time, she felt a deep curiosity about humans, about their history, their struggles, and their resilience. Perhaps the galaxy had been wrong to judge them so harshly. Perhaps the human race had qualities no other species could match. Meanwhile, Eli returned to his quarters, examining the arena for the next trials. His mind was focused, calm, and strategic. He knew the challenges ahead would be harder, designed specifically to exploit weaknesses. But he also knew that humans had a unique ability, the ability to adapt, endure, and keep moving forward when all seemed lost. As night fell over Zalaris Prime, the twin suns dipping below the horizon, Eli looked out over the city from his window. The lights of the alien world glimmered like stars, reflecting off metallic surfaces and glass towers. He felt a quiet determination rising in him. The trials ahead were dangerous, yes, but they were also opportunities. Opportunities to prove that humans were not weak, that they were capable of incredible endurance and ingenuity, and that the galaxy had underestimated them at its own peril. Somewhere in the palace, Princess Ziara was watching him, thinking about the unexpected lesson this human had already taught her. Never underestimate the spirit of a species that refuses to give up. And for Eli Carter, the first step had been taken. The human had survived the second trial, learned more about the world around him, and begun rewriting the galaxy's expectations, one step at a time. The morning air was crisp on Zalaris Prime, and the arena hummed with anticipation. Today's trial was unlike any the crowd had ever seen. The previous tests had been tests of balance, endurance, and focus. Today, it was designed to push the body to its absolute limit, a series of physical challenges meant to break the strongest beings in the galaxy. Eli Carter approached the arena gate, his calm demeanor unchanged. Sweat from yesterday still dampened his hair, but his eyes were steady, scanning the environment with intelligence and focus. He had studied every detail of the arena's construction, memorized the patterns of the traps, and considered each strategy carefully. Humans, he thought, were masters at adapting. While others relied purely on natural strength, humans survived by observing, thinking, and reacting. That was his advantage. Princess Ziara watched him closely from her elevated seat. She had expected him to falter, to stumble, even to panic. Yet here he was, walking into the most dangerous trial without hesitation. Her pride demanded that she believe in the superiority of her species, but a seed of doubt had begun to grow. Perhaps humans were more resilient than the galaxy gave them credit for. The announcer, a robotic voice amplified through the arena's speakers, called out, "Today's trial is the gauntlet of endurance. Obstacles, moving platforms, energy pulses, and droid assaults will test strength, speed, and persistence. Only the most determined challenger will survive." The gates opened, and Eli stepped into the arena. The first section was a wide corridor filled with swinging mechanical arms designed to knock challengers off their feet. He paused for a moment, feeling the rhythm of the moving arms. Timing, he thought, was everything. He stepped forward, ducking under the first arm, then sliding sideways under the next. Each movement was deliberate, each breath measured. The audience watched in awe. Other species would have charged forward, using brute strength to push past the arms. Eli did not. He flowed with the obstacles, moving as if the arena itself were an extension of his body. Princess Ziara leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. He was doing something no human or alien had ever attempted. He was using patience instead of power. When he reached the end of the corridor, the second section awaited, a field of energy pulses. Beams of light flashed from floor to ceiling, changing patterns unpredictably. One wrong step could send a wave of force that would knock a challenger unconscious. Eli studied the movement, his mind calculating the safest path. Then, step by step, he advanced, carefully timing each movement to avoid the pulses. A small drone zipped toward him, attempting to force him into the energy beams. Eli sidestepped, using a quick spin to redirect the drone's path. It clanged against the side barrier and fell harmlessly. The crowd gasped. A human, they whispered, navigating the energy field with skill that rivaled the greatest Zalaris warriors. Halfway through the field, Eli stumbled slightly. One of the beams shifted unexpectedly, and he barely avoided the shock. His heart raced, his muscles tensed, but he did not panic. He took a deep breath and continued. Humans survived by learning from mistakes, by pushing past fear and pain. Today, that instinct would carry him further than brute force ever could. Princess Ziara felt her pulse quicken as she watched. The pride she had carried for her own strength now wavered. The human was not stronger than her, but his endurance, his calm, and his adaptability made him dangerous in ways she had not predicted. She had trained to dominate with power and skill. He had trained to survive with will and intelligence. The third section of the trial was the most physically demanding. A series of platforms floated high above the arena floor, some rotating, some tilting, and others moving along invisible tracks. Energy barriers pulsed between the platforms, creating narrow paths that demanded both agility and timing. Eli paused at the first platform, stretching his legs, feeling the movement of the floating structures. The weight of his body pressed against his muscles, testing his balance. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped forward. The platform tilted, forcing him to adjust, and he leapt to the next with precision. One misstep and he would fall into the low-gravity pit below. The audience watched in complete silence. Every step he took seemed effortless, but only because he had trained his mind to anticipate every movement. His endurance, combined with intelligence and focus, allowed him to survive challenges that would crush almost any other being. Princess Ziara clenched her fists. The human was doing more than surviving. He was excelling in a trial meant to humiliate the weak. She had never experienced this before. Her pride demanded she crush him, yet she could not ignore the growing respect in her heart. Humans, she realized, were unlike any other species. Their strength came not from muscle, but from spirit. Eli reached the middle of the floating platform section. A drone lunged toward him, faster than any he had seen. Its programming was designed to anticipate movements, to force challengers off the platforms. Eli did not hesitate. He ducked, rolled, and jumped, landing perfectly on the next platform. The drone spun out of control and collided with a barrier. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Humans, they murmured, were supposed to be weak. Yet here he was, navigating impossible obstacles with calm determination. The final section approached. A long corridor lined with swinging pendulums, spinning wheels, and high-pressure energy jets. Eli's muscles ached, his lungs burned, and sweat streamed down his face. But he did not slow. Humans endured, humans survived, and humans, when pushed to the edge, often discovered reserves of strength no one else could imagine. Step by step, Eli advanced. He ducked under pendulums, jumped over wheels, and sidestepped energy jets. One of the jets nearly caught him off guard, but he reacted in time, rolling through the blast and landing safely. The crowd erupted, unable to contain their astonishment. Princess Ziara rose from her seat. Her eyes were wide. How is he still standing?" she whispered to herself. The human had passed challenges that would have broken any other challenger, yet he moved forward, calm, collected, and focused. Eli reached the end of the corridor and paused, breathing heavily. The gong sounded, signaling the end of the trial. He stood tall, chest heaving, muscles trembling from exhaustion, yet unbroken. The audience erupted into applause, not just for the survival, but for the display of perseverance, intelligence, and resilience. The humans in the gallery cheered quietly, proud of what their representative had accomplished. Princess Zyara remained silent for a moment, studying him carefully. She had underestimated him, and now she realized her mistake. Humans were not weak, they were not fragile, they were clever, determined, and unyielding. Strength, she understood, was not only measured by size or speed, it was measured by endurance, adaptability, and willpower. She stood and spoke aloud, her voice carrying across the arena. "Human, you have surpassed my expectations. You endure where others fail. You think where others act blindly. I see now that strength comes in many forms." Eli bowed slightly, acknowledging her words without arrogance. "I do not seek to surpass anyone," he said. "I only aim to endure. That is how humans survive." The princess's expression softened, though her competitive spirit remained. "Your endurance is remarkable, but the trials are not yet over. The final challenge will test your mind, your body, and your spirit. Many have failed before reaching it." Eli nodded. "I am ready." He had learned much from the first two trials. Patience, focus, and strategy were as important as strength. The next challenge would be harder, but humans thrived on challenges. They learned from them, adapted, and overcame. As he left the arena, Princess Zyara followed him with her gaze. Something had shifted. She no longer saw him as a weak human to be humiliated. She saw a species capable of surprising, of enduring, and of achieving greatness against impossible odds. In the quiet of his quarters, Eli reflected on the day. The trials were designed to crush him, to test every limit, yet he had survived. He felt fatigue, yes, but also a quiet pride. Humans did not need to be the strongest or the fastest. They needed persistence, adaptability, and courage. And those traits underestimated across the galaxy, would carry him further than anyone expected. Night fell over Zalaris Prime, the twin suns dipping below the horizon, leaving a sky painted in shades of violet and gold. The city's lights shimmered like stars, reflecting the quiet determination that burned in Eli Carter. Tomorrow would bring the final trial, and he would face it as he faced all challenges, calmly, intelligently, and with the endurance of a human spirit that refused to break. Princess Zyara returned to her chambers, pacing again. Her pride demanded that she challenge him, that she prove her superiority. Yet her mind kept returning to the same thought. Humans were not the weak species she had assumed. They were persistent, clever, and capable of surviving anything. And this one human, this young man, had shown her a glimpse of the greatness her people had ignored for too long. Eli Carter slept that night with the knowledge that the galaxy had begun to see humans in a new light. His trials were far from over, but already the first seeds of respect had been planted. And somewhere in the palace, Princess Zyara prepared for the next day, her mind racing with strategies and predictions, wondering if her species had finally met a challenge worthy of their full attention, and if humans, in their quiet strength, were more than she had ever imagined. The day of the final trial dawned bright over Zalaris Prime. Eli Carter stood at the edge of the arena, stretching his arms and legs as he observed the enormous course laid out before him. Unlike the previous trials, this one was designed to test every skill a being could possess: endurance, strength, agility, strategy, and even mental focus. Giant obstacles moved unpredictably, droids swarmed the pathways, and energy barriers pulsed in chaotic patterns. Only the strongest and smartest could survive. Princess Zyara sat on her elevated seat, her golden hair glinting in the sunlight. Her amber eyes were fixed on Eli. There had been whispers across the galaxy about humans being weak, fragile, and incapable of standing against truly strong species. Yet here was one human who had endured what no one expected. Her pride, trained for years to believe in her superiority, felt a strange tension. Respect was beginning to replace arrogance. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "This is the final trial. Only the most determined and skilled challenger will survive the gauntlet of endurance. Let the challenge begin." The gates opened, and Eli stepped forward. The first section of the trial was a maze of towering walls and shifting floors. The walls shifted unpredictably, forcing challengers to adapt continuously. Drones hovered overhead, programmed to block and confuse. Energy beams pulsed from hidden sources, threatening anyone who moved too quickly. Eli paused for a moment, analyzing the movements. Unlike many challengers who relied on raw speed to escape danger, he moved deliberately. Step by step, he adjusted to the rhythm of the moving walls and avoided the energy pulses. He observed the drones' patterns and moved in a way that forced them to follow his pace rather than dictate it. The crowd watched in astonishment. Every species in attendance had believed humans to be weak, and every step Eli took challenged that belief. Even the princess found herself leaning forward, studying his movements with intense curiosity. "Remarkable," she whispered to her aide, Kyle. "He does not act like the others. He does not react blindly. He studies, he adapts, and he endures. He is human and yet incredible." Eli continued through the maze. At one point, a section of the floor dropped, revealing a low-gravity pit filled with rotating energy beams. Most challengers would have panicked, jumping recklessly or hesitating too long. Eli measured the distance, timed the rotation of the beams, and leaped with precision. He landed safely on the other side, chest heaving but unbroken. Princess Yara's thoughts raced. She had faced the best warriors from her world, yet none had approached challenges like this human. His endurance was impressive, but it was more than that. His mind, his patience, his ability to adapt, all combined to create a force she could not ignore. The next segment was a high platform course with rotating beams, swinging pendulums, and narrow walkways suspended hundreds of meters above the arena floor. Any misstep could be fatal. Eli's muscles ached from the previous sections, yet he moved forward steadily. He focused on balance, timing, and anticipation, using every ounce of skill he had learned from training and observation. Halfway through the platform course, a drone lunged at him unexpectedly. It was faster than any he had encountered before. Eli did not panic. He leapt sideways, rolled across a beam, and landed on the next platform. The drone spun out of control, striking a barrier and falling harmlessly. The audience gasped, some rising to their feet in astonishment. Princess Yara could not hide her amazement. "He is still standing," she murmured. How does he endure like this?" She had trained her entire life to dominate challengers, to rely on strength, skill, and experience. Yet this human was teaching her a lesson she had never expected. Endurance was more than raw power. It was will, intelligence, and patience combined. The final section approached. A massive chamber opened before Eli, filled with spinning walls, rotating platforms, energy barriers, and multiple drones programmed to attack simultaneously. This was the ultimate test, designed to push challengers past exhaustion, fear, and doubt. Eli paused at the entrance, his body aching but his mind sharp. He had learned from the previous trials that patience and strategy were as powerful as strength. Humans endured because they adapted. Humans survived because they did not give up, even when the odds were impossible. He stepped forward, moving slowly but deliberately, analyzing every threat before acting. The drones attacked first, swarming from multiple directions. Eli ducked, rolled, and dodged, using timing and anticipation rather than brute force. The spinning walls shifted rapidly, and he adjusted his balance, moving with precision across the unstable platforms. Energy barriers pulsed around him, but he observed their rhythm and moved in harmony with them, avoiding the blasts. Minutes passed, yet Eli did not falter. The crowd had gone silent, unable to comprehend the determination and skill of a human surviving the ultimate trial. Even the princess was captivated, her mind struggling to reconcile centuries of prejudice with the reality before her eyes. At one point, Eli stumbled. One of the rotating platforms tipped suddenly, sending him off balance. He fell partially, catching himself just in time with one hand on a support beam. His muscles burned, his heart raced, but he pulled himself back up and continued. Humans, he reminded himself, survived not because they were the fastest or strongest, but because they refused to give up. Princess Yara leaned forward, her eyes wide. For the first time, she saw the truth of human strength. It was not in muscle or size or even in raw speed. It was in endurance. It was in persistence. It was in the will to keep moving forward, even when exhaustion threatened to stop you. The final stretch of the chamber was a narrow bridge suspended above a pit filled with pulsing energy beams. Any misstep could result in being knocked into the pit below. Eli stepped onto the bridge carefully, measuring each step, adjusting his balance constantly. A drone approached from behind. Eli did not panic. He sidestepped, letting it pass harmlessly beneath him. Halfway across the bridge, one of the energy beams pulsed unexpectedly, sending a jolt of heat across the path. Eli felt the burn, but he did not falter. He adjusted, leapt over the pulse, and landed safely on the far side. The audience erupted in cheers, unable to contain their astonishment. Princess Ziara's voice broke through the noise. "Human, you have endured what no other species could. You survive where others fail. You adapt where others struggle. You are remarkable." Eli bowed slightly, chest heaving. "I do not seek to prove myself superior," he said. "I only endure. That is how humans survive." The princess remained silent for a moment, her thoughts racing. She had underestimated humans, assumed they were weak, and yet here was one teaching her a lesson she could not ignore. The galaxy had judged humans for their size, their appearance, and their perceived fragility. But endurance, resilience, and intelligence, qualities humans had honed over generations, were far more powerful than she had ever imagined. The final gong sounded, signaling the end of the trial. Eli stood tall, exhausted, but unbroken. The crowd erupted in applause, not just for his survival, but for the revelation that humans were a species to be respected, not dismissed. Princess Ziara rose from her seat, her expression a mix of awe and humility. She descended the steps toward Eli, who remained calm and steady. "Human," she said, her voice clear and sincere, "I have underestimated your species. I see now that strength is not measured only in muscle or speed. It is measured in will, in persistence, and in the courage to endure. You have shown me the truth of human strength." Eli nodded, acknowledging her words. "Thank you," he said simply. "Humans survive because we do not give up. That is how we endure." The princess smiled faintly. For the first time, she did not see a human as weak or inferior. She saw a species capable of achieving greatness against impossible odds. She had faced many opponents in the arena, but none had taught her a lesson like this. As Eli left the arena, he felt a quiet pride. Not in defeating the challenges, not in winning applause, but in showing that humans, though underestimated, possessed a unique and undeniable strength. Across the galaxy, perceptions of humanity had begun to shift, and for Princess Ziara, the day had changed her. She had learned that strength was not only in dominance, skill, or tradition, but in the quiet, persistent will that refused to yield to any obstacle. Eli Carter, a single human among thousands of alien species, had shown her the true meaning of endurance. That night, the stars of Zalaris Prime shone brighter than ever. Eli rested, knowing that the final steps of his journey on the planet would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. But he was ready. Humans endured. Humans survived. And humans, when underestimated, often became the greatest force anyone could face. Princess Ziara sat in her chambers, thinking. She realized that her world, and perhaps the entire galaxy, had misunderstood humans for too long. One human had stood against what no one thought possible, and she had seen it with her own eyes. Respect, curiosity, and even admiration filled her mind. The trials had ended, but the lesson had only begun. Humanity's place in the galaxy had been quietly rewritten, not through conquest, but through endurance, intelligence, and the unyielding spirit of a single human. The day of recognition dawned over Zalaris Prime. The twin suns rose in perfect alignment, casting long golden rays across the city and the arena. Eli Carter stood quietly near the gates, observing the gathered crowd. Today was not a trial of endurance or strength. Today was a trial of perception, a moment when the galaxy would see humans as they truly were. Princess Ziara descended from her elevated seat, her steps deliberate and measured. Her silver hair shimmered in the sunlight, and her amber eyes glowed with pride and respect. For the first time, she faced Eli not as a challenger, but as a representative of a species she had long underestimated. The arena was filled with thousands of spectators from across the galaxy. They had come expecting a story of human failure. Instead, they were about to witness the acknowledgement of humanity's quiet but undeniable power. Eli walked to the center of the arena. The crowd fell silent as he raised his hand in greeting. He did not boast, he did not shout. He simply stood, calm and composed, a single human representing the endurance, intelligence, and persistence of his entire species. Princess Ziara stepped forward, her expression serious but respectful. "Human," she began, her voice clear and steady, "you have endured what no other challenger has survived. You have faced challenges that would have crushed the strongest warriors from across the galaxy. You have done so not through sheer force, but through will, strategy, and determination. You have earned the respect of every being here today." Eli bowed slightly, acknowledging her words. "Thank you, Princess Ziara," he said. "I do not fight for glory or recognition. I endure because that is what humans have always done. We survive, we adapt, and we persist. That is how we grow stronger, and that is how we endure." The audience erupted into applause. The sound echoed across the arena, filling the space with a wave of astonishment and admiration. Humans had been underestimated for centuries, dismissed as fragile and weak. Yet here was one standing tall, proving that strength was not only measured by size or muscle, but by heart, mind, and perseverance. Princess Yara's voice rose above the applause. "Let this day mark a new understanding. Humanity is no longer to be underestimated. They are capable of achieving greatness through endurance, courage, and intelligence. Today we witness the true strength of your kind." Eli nodded, his eyes scanning the crowd. He felt pride, yes, but more than that, he felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond personal achievement. He had shown the galaxy that humans, often dismissed, were capable of extraordinary feats. They did not need to dominate through aggression. They dominated through persistence, adaptability, and the unyielding spirit that had carried them across countless generations. The crowd continued to cheer. Zalaris citizens, aliens from distant stars, and even seasoned warriors from across the galaxy began to murmur among themselves. The human race was no longer a species to be overlooked. The stories of Earth, once dismissed as legends, now carried weight in every mind present. Princess Ziara approached Eli, extending her hand. "You have taught me something I will never forget," she said. "Strength is not only in what the body can do, but in what the mind and spirit can endure. Humanity has shown me a new standard of excellence. I am grateful to witness it firsthand." Eli shook her hand firmly. "Thank you," he said again. "I hope that today humans are seen not just as survivors, but as beings capable of greatness. Our history, our struggles, our persistence, these are our strengths and they define us." The princess smiled, her expression sincere. "Then let it be known across the galaxy. Humans are strong, clever, and resilient. They are worthy of respect, and they are a species to be honored, not underestimated." Word of Eli's achievement spread quickly across the planet and beyond. Holographic broadcasts showed his trials to billions across multiple star systems. The message was clear. Humans were no longer the underdogs, no longer fragile or weak. They were a species of endurance, intelligence, and determination. Eli left the arena that day not as a champion seeking praise, but as a representative of his people. He had proven something far greater than personal victory. He had changed the perception of humanity in the galaxy. Aliens who once mocked humans now whispered with admiration. Leaders who once dismissed Earth's inhabitants began to reconsider their opinions. In the palace, Princess Ziara reflected on what she had witnessed. She had faced countless opponents in the arena, tested her skill against the strongest beings from across the stars, yet none had taught her what this human had. Not raw power, not flashy techniques, not sheer speed. What Eli demonstrated was endurance, patience, intelligence, and courage, qualities that her people admired but had rarely respected in outsiders. For the first time, she realized that humans were not meant to dominate through aggression, but through resilience. They did not need to overpower others. They needed to endure, adapt, and survive. That was their greatest strength, and it was a power no one could ignore. Across Zalaris Prime, celebrations began. The arena's victory screens displayed Eli's accomplishments, highlighting his endurance, intelligence, and focus. Citizens of other species marveled at the human who had survived trials thought impossible. Even those who had doubted now looked at humanity with new eyes. Eli returned to his quarters that evening. He was exhausted, his body aching from the trials, but his mind was calm. He reflected on everything he had learned, the importance of strategy, the power of observation, and the quiet strength that came from persistence. Humans had endured disasters, wars, and hardships for centuries. This arena was just another challenge, another test of their resilience, and he had passed it. Princess Ziara visited him later, not as an opponent, but as a friend and ally. "Eli," she said softly, "I have spent my life believing strength was in skill and power alone. You have shown me something greater. Humans endure because they refuse to give up, because they adapt, and because they persist even when all seems lost. You have changed how I see your species." Eli smiled faintly. That is all we ask, he said. That humans are understood for who we truly are. Strength is not always visible, but it is real. The princess nodded, her eyes thoughtful. Then let this be the beginning of a new era. Let humanity be seen not as weak, but as capable, resilient, and worthy of honor. The galaxy must remember this lesson. In the following days, reports of Eli's trials spread to every corner of the galaxy. The Galactic Alliance began to reconsider its policies toward Earth. Humans were no longer seen as insignificant observers of interstellar affairs. They were respected, valued, and recognized for the qualities that had always defined them: endurance, intelligence, and the unyielding will to survive and thrive. Eli returned to his ship, looking out over Zalaris Prime one last time. The twin suns glinted on the city below, reflecting the energy and potential of countless beings who had observed his trials. He knew this was only the beginning. Humanity's place in the galaxy was changing, slowly but surely, and he had helped pave the way. Princess Ziara stood on the balcony of her palace, watching the human depart. A smile touched her lips. She had faced champions, warriors, and masters of combat, yet none had taught her what Eli had: the quiet, steady, unstoppable power of a human spirit. Strength was not only measured in muscle or reflexes, she realized. It was measured in determination, in endurance, and in the refusal to give up. In the days that followed, humans were invited to participate in interstellar councils, to share their knowledge, and to demonstrate their skills. Their reputation, once insignificant, now commanded respect. Aliens began to approach humans with curiosity and admiration rather than dismissal. Eli's trials had not just been a personal victory, they had rewritten history. Eli knew that humanity's journey would not be easy. The galaxy was vast, filled with challenges, dangers, and unknown worlds. But he also knew that humans were ready. They had endured centuries of hardship on their own planet, and now, facing the stars, they could endure even more. They would adapt, persist, and overcome. Princess Ziara sent a message across the galaxy. Let all species recognize the strength of humans. They are resilient, intelligent, and capable of enduring any challenge. Today, we honor not just one human, but all of humanity. And so, humanity's place in the galaxy was forever changed. Not through aggression or conquest, but through endurance, intelligence, and the quiet courage that defined their kind. Eli Carter, a single human, had proven what countless generations before him had shown in their own way. Humans survive, humans endure, and humans, when underestimated, often achieve greatness beyond imagination. As the twin suns set over Zalaris Prime, casting golden and violet light across the city, Eli looked out from his ship, ready for the next journey. The galaxy had witnessed the strength of humanity. The universe would no longer underestimate them. And for the first time, aliens like Princess Ziara understood the truth. Humans were not only survivors, they were extraordinary.